Hey, this is Stacy Ross with Bump and Stacy, and we are getting you ready for Week 10 with the Seahawks warm-up, taking you through some of our favorite interviews this week to get you ready for this game against the Arizona Cardinals.
How many Super Bowl contenders are there? We're almost halfway through the year. How many legitimate Super Bowl contenders are there in the NFL? And obviously the follow-up question to that will be, are the Seahawks one of them? But how many do you think there are?
Well, I'll answer the second part. Yes, the Seahawks are absolutely one of them. And I think I would say there's more this year, just because I don't think there's a team, this isn't a year where you're looking at a Chiefs team. We've seen them at times, be undefeated at this point in the year, or, even Philly's got off to some incredible starts and they looked a little bit like a juggernaut. I don't think we have that this year. So I would say there's anywhere from, 8 to 9, maybe even stretch it to 10. I think there's more this year than we would have in a normal year.
And the Seahawks in that grouping?
Oh, 1,000%. Yeah. I've kind of had them as a team that I thought's the most complete. And by the way, I know we have other stuff to cover and talking about trade deadline, but Brock, you got me so excited when you texted me this morning and about this whole top 7 Seahawks thing. And I want to layer beyond that, which I'm excited to get to. But
look at DJ. I just said, hey, heads up.
Gave me homework right before class started.
I said, we're just talking about most irreplaceable Seahawks. It may come up.
It's an old exercise.
Great.
Yeah, Brock and I have done this exercise every year. Or I think. I remember doing it all the way back, talking Earl Thomas at some point and saying, hey, he might be the most.
Zach Thomas or Zach Miller, the tight end. Yeah. We did it all the way back in 10 and 11.
Yeah, just look, because it takes into account not just how good the player is, but also what you have behind them, the importance of the position. Like, what would you do if you lost? All right, so did you sketch out a most irreplaceable?
Did he do that? He did even more.
What'd you get?
I did this
Let's
first
compare
part
notes.
of it, and then I'm curious to see where we go, because it is a balance between that of what's behind him and how would you survive, the importance of the position. We used to do this in training camp every year when I was scouting. We would sit there and go through literally all 32 teams. And my buddy who I worked with for a while at NFL Network, he would do the exercise. He called it the Jenga piece. Like, if you pulled this piece out, that the whole thing would collapse. So it's a great fun exercise. So I put down my 7, and it kind of, I'm curious to see where you guys landed on it. But obviously I started with Sam because it's the quarterback and you start there. I went to JSN number 2. I went to Leonard Williams number 3. I went to his running mate Byron Murphy as number 4. I went with, and this is about the importance of the position as much as anything else, I went with Cross at number 5. And this is where it became challenging, because I had 4 guys for 2 spots. But I ended up going, for me, and I'm saying like this, to win a championship, I think you need these 2 guys, and you need these 2 guys to play at a high level. I went Eamon and Spoon as my 6 and 7.
All right. Well, we start off similar, and then it changes quite a bit.
I had Zabel and Lucas were my next 2.
There you go.
Yeah, see, that's where we went. So, yeah, we both agreed on Sam and JSN. I had Cross 3rd, and Leo 4th, but Brock and I kind of talked through it. We're like, it could go either way. We kind of had them both in that range. And maybe the reasoning on Cross ahead of Leonard is just what you have behind him. Like, they got enough of a rotation at defensive line to survive short term without Leonard Williams. I don't know what happens if Charles Cross goes out. Like, I don't know what that looks like.
Oh, no, he got hurt. Joe Alt. No, he got hurt. Rashawn Slater. No, he got hurt.
Yeah, what happens?
Number 8 and 9.
Yeah,
there with the Chargers right now.
I don't know what Josh Jones looks like in a game. I know that's the direction they'd go, but that would make me pretty nervous. It's interesting that you went with Murphy and Eamon and Spoon. We've seen it without Eamon and Spoon.
Yeah, but I to me, to get where you want to go, to get through the gauntlet, I think you need to have your guys that can play at a blue chip level, that can make difference-making plays in those big games. And those guys, you can survive it's just like we've talked about it with the baseball thing, like there's the 162 player and then there's the playoff player. And I think when you get in the NFL playoffs, you need your difference makers. I think those guys can be major difference makers.
The one name, because we then had Zabel and DeMarcus Lawrence, because we saw what it looked like without DeMarcus, and it was not pretty. The one guy that I think we had on here that you did not mention at all is Ernest Jones. And just, again, some of that is what's the depth behind him. Seeing him.
And we watched this defense without linebackers for some years.
Yeah.
We watched it even the first 7 games of last year without a linebacker that fit Mike McDonald, without the run fit, without the voice, without settling down the second level. And it was a little scary operation at times without a linebacker within this scheme and what Mike asks of it.
No, he's a really good player. I can't fight you on that one. I probably went a little more with the traditional value of the position, and that's why you don't see the running backs on there. You don't see
why Byron Murphy over Jaron Reed? Out of curiosity.
To me, I think he run and pass is such a difference maker, and I think he plays off Leonard so well. I think their skill sets match up so well with one another. So,
could you go into a little more? What does that mean to have their skill sets match up?
Well, I just think you've got Leonard can be a bull, who is just so powerful and can be a bull and move guys around. And Byron Murphy can win on edges of blockers. Like he can use his quickness, and he can still leverage obviously underneath guys and those things. But I think it's like you've got kind of the big physical, bull for lack of a better words, and you've got the quickness of Murphy to kind of play off of that. You want to run games, anything you want to do. I think they marry up very well together. Whereas Jaron, to me, is he's a lesser version of Leonard. Like they're similar, a little more similar in terms of physical structure and play style.
Take the tape next level. Everyone sees the numbers. 17 for his first 17. Of course, it was a fade route that Salk and I love on 3rd and 1 that was incomplete. But take me through the tape from your perspective.
Yeah, to me, the ball placement was as good as it's ever been. The decision making, the processing was so quick. There was a play on there where they go empty, and he gets to number 3 so fast in the progression that the first thing I wrote down was just vision, poise, and then I reluctantly put this down, but I was like, that's as peak Joe Burrow a looking play as you'll see. What they would do with Burrow is they'll empty it out because he can see and process so fast. And I saw that and I was like, that was kind of Burrow-esque. Watching Sam get through that as fast as he did. But I thought the play design was excellent. He's accurate on the move. The touchdown, not the 7 route, not the easy layup to Horton, but the one where he threw it as he's just kind of got him on his back, and the trust to be able to get that out early in the back of the end zone and just put it right on his numbers. That just shows you a player who's playing with supreme confidence.
Have you followed any of this Greg Olson commentary where he said the Seahawks aren't a good running team? They're a team that throws well out of heavy personnel. And I understand kind of what he's trying to say. That has been where a lot of their success has come. But I don't feel like that's like their goal necessarily, is to be a team that throws the ball all over the yard, but with heavy personnel. What would be your reaction to kind of the idea that that's what they are?
Every good team in the league right now is doing the same thing. They're all out there in heavy personnel, and that's where they're getting their chunk plays with their passing game. Like everybody's doing that. That's where you're trying to get your single high safety looks, which you can attack more vertically, and you do that by manipulating the defense with heavy looks. So that's not just a Seahawk thing. That's everybody across the league that's playing smart offense.
So is that a reaction, DJ? Is that a reaction to all of the too high safety that showed up the last few years?
That's how you get them out of it. That's all we've seen. So you want to be out there in 11 personnel, 3 wide receivers. That's what you're going to see. You're going to see they're going to try and limit explosives. They're going to play shell coverage. And so what teams have now realized was, okay, we can get them out of that by formation. We're going to put extra tight ends out there, and we're going to simplify the looks, and we're going to let our guys win one-on-one in that when we get those looks. And so that's not just a Seahawk thing. That's across the league. By the way, you didn't let me get to my expanded
I'm sorry. Yeah,
area of this thing. So I want to go with your look at your list. Look at your list, guys.
All right.
So the 2024 champion, which was the Philadelphia Eagles, I'm going to give you their 7 guys from their Super Bowl lineup last year, and I want to see how you feel like the Seahawks stack up. You ready?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. So with them, I wrote down Saquon, Lane Johnson. You can put Jalen Hurts in, wherever you want to slide him in. Jalen Carter, Quinion Mitchell, Zach Bond, A.J. Brown. So that's the 7 that I came up with. Within the 2 alternates that I gave you was Zabel, and I had Zabel and Lucas. And then for them, I'd put Devontae Smith and Mailata. So if you wanted to expand it to 9, you could expand it to 9. But how would you feel stacking up against a team that won the trophy last year?
Pretty
Not
good.
terrible.
Pretty good.
That's my point.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, I like a lot of their players. Don't get me wrong. I like Hurts a lot. I like Carter a lot. I mean, obviously
go position
Lane
to
Johnson's
position.
really
Like
good. But
I mean, obviously Saquon is the X factor because I like the backs in Seattle, but there's nobody that's close to Saquon. But if you look at the Lane Johnson, I would give the edge, at the tackle position. But D tackle wise, that's a fair fight.
Yep.
Corner wise, receiver wise, I would lean JSN. Quarterback wise, I would lean towards Sam the way he's playing right now and what he can do.
But Sam, you're right. I mean, just unbelievable. The efficiency, the accuracy. Brock keeps bringing up how few sacks he's taken this year, and obviously he shares that stat with the offensive line. But what does it tell you what is it, Brock? 9 sacks in 8 games?
Yeah.
What does 9 sacks in 8 games tell you about the way he's playing quarterback?
Complete control of the system, processing information, incredibly quick. He's on platform and he knows what he's looking at and he knows where the football needs to go and in the timing to do so. And that he has guys that can win and create spacing on time. And I think that's the one part of the equation. Everyone looks at the O-line when sack numbers. Then, more sophisticated people also look at, the quarterback and his responsibility within pass protection. But very few people actually think about or talk about what's the picture being provided to the quarterback, and are those wide receivers providing that picture, winning and creating space on time? And I think that can be at times the more difficult part. And I know we've said this, and this is not meant to be disparaging, but when Jackson Smith-Njigba, knowing what I knew of him covering Ohio State every other week for what feels like my entire career, I mean, I knew he was going to be an incredible player in the NFL. His short area quickness, his intelligence, his strength with his hands. And when he went to Seattle, it was like, it's like, really? Can we get him in an actual offense? Again, not meant to be disparaging, even though it comes off incredibly disparaging. But this offense fits him very well, and Sam fits him very well. So your question about the protection, I think, also extends to those guys that are winning on time, and JSN being the foremost of that, which is why he's excelling and been really one of the most productive receivers in the league over the last month.
What does Rashid Shaheed do for that?
Well, it extends the defense. Number one, when you put speed on the field, they have to respect that. Now, I've never felt like Sam was a great deep ball thrower, but I think he's gotten better. But what it does is it lifts the pressure off of those intermediate zones, and it allows the guys underneath him to operate with a greater amount of freedom and space. So, I mean, that's a good get, and I think that's why they got him. It's not necessarily, even though you would love some productivity from him, but it's the threat of stretch. And the threat of stretch provides space. And when you've got a guy that's carving it up like Sam, and he's on time and he's on target, when you create even just feet of more space within the system, he's going to take advantage of that.
We spent a lot of time with DJ yesterday, most of the segment talking Sam and JSN in this offense. I want to flip it on the other side because you've been enamored with McDonald and kept relationship with him through the years. So when you watch that Seahawks defense Sunday night just absolutely swallow 4 sacks of Jaden Daniels, ultimately knocked him out of the game, just made that group pretty pedestrian. What did you see, even with backups playing still for Seattle on the back end? What did you see out of McDonald's Seahawks defense here in 2025?
For a young guy, he was young when I was dealing with him back in 2021, and he's still young. What I was always enamored with was how sound he was structurally. He never, I don't want to say never. I mean, it's like marriage and football. You never say never or always. And yet there was never a moment where I felt like, he's putting himself at risk. So the structure and the way that even when he was attacking different structures on offense, I always felt like he did as good of a job as any of maintaining kind of the risk reward profile to be in his favor. It's hard to describe the specifics of that, but it has to do with rotation, specific matchups. And then the other thing, and he and I used to talk about this a lot, he was really good at attacking specific passing protection structures. And Brock, as you know, offensive coaches can get locked into certain protections, or they've got big tells, center sliding away from the back, how do they do it when they flip the back, so on and so forth. And he was really good at calling things that were simple for his defense, confusing for the offense, that would attack the structure. So, for instance, a very prevalent pass protection in football, both levels, is what I would call a slide protection. And it's not a full slide, but it's like a half slide to the what I would call like the weak side of the protection, or the offside for the quarterback, and then a man protection on the front side. And he would do a really good job of providing structures that would unlock where the slide is happening, and then he would simply overload one side with a 4-man side. And yet he would do that with rotation, not always in zone pressure, but with rotation that wouldn't skew the risk reward profile of the defense. That's what I always thought about Mike. He's a really smart guy. And the other thing that I always really enjoyed is he was humble enough to take feedback and also listen to his coaches. So he would be very blunt about like, well, I don't know this very well. And, this is a guy on our staff that does. And so he's been able to design that. And that trait, when I first learned it back in 21, I knew right away, like at some point he's going to be a very good head coach, because he's not a guy that sit there and has to know all the answers. But because of that mentality, he certainly has a lot of the answers.
In talking about this team, we've talked a lot about balance, and Mike's word is complementary. Brock's used the word alignment. One of the things that I found really interesting, and we were talking about it with DJ yesterday, is this sort of idea of playing with the safety, that trying to get teams out of the too high safety look that has come in the last few years to wreck the big passing games with, Patrick Mahomes and some of those guys, and then using these big players, big personnel to take them out of it and saying, hey, we're going to be able to run the ball on you if you want to keep that other safety way back there. And then when they say, okay, well, then we're going to bring the safety up, then using the ability to throw the ball out of those same formations. Where do you think this goes? It's sort of for me, just a fascinating cat and mouse game in the NFL right now of trying to find ways to run and throw effectively.
Yeah, I mean, that's always, everything is a cycle. And, offenses tend to be copycat. And so they'll see things that are working, and then the defense has to adjust. A few years ago, like Seattle made post safety all the rage. And everyone played cover 3, post safety meaning single safety. Everyone did it, and then there'll be a defense that comes along and it's like, oh man, the man coverage, it takes away the RPOs and does this. And so then everyone kind of moves and so it's always cyclical. And in football, as in life, there is nothing new under the sun, and so it is the coaches and the systems that have balance, and I'm not just talking about run-pass balance, but have the balance from a structure standpoint to attack whatever the weakness is on any given defense. And those are the ones that have success at each level. And then the complementary side of this, and this is not as much, in the structure of safeties and everything, but, Mike learned that from Jim at Michigan, and maybe John as well at Baltimore, but specifically Jim at Michigan. Nobody played better complementary football than Michigan. But it was kind of the beauty of the simplicity of it, right? And the field position battle and how that would go. And Mike and then Jesse Minter would always talk about calling defense like playing poker. The best poker players fold 65, 70% of their hands. And so the best defensive play callers play safe structures 65, 70% of the time. And then it's not every single series, but there are going to be moments when the game allows you, or your hand allows you, to get aggressive. And you understand that a 3 and out at that moment, a stop at that moment, is really going to hurt the opposition. Versus just trying to, everyone's like, well, they got to get a stop. Yes, you obviously want to get stops, but there are moments when those stops are more impactful. You go down and you put together a long score on the offensive side, and then you come out, maybe it's the third quarter, maybe it's a possession game, and then all of a sudden it's like, hey, a 3-and-out here puts them in a bind because their defense is tired and so on. And we used to have those conversations, which I really appreciated. When you think of complementary football, in game, where do you push your chips in the middle of the table to give them the most opportunity to have impact within that game? And then over the course of a season, how are you making sure that the best parts of your team are fresh, efficient, and ready to play their best?
This is not 1 or 2 games into the season and you're going, yeah, the Seahawks look pretty solid. Bump, it is week 10. You are 8 games into the season, or week 9 is just wrapped. You're 8 games into the season, and you are a top 5 passing offense. That's in terms of total yards. When you break it down by pass play, because you pass less than anyone besides like Baltimore and Philly, you actually are the most productive team by pass attempt. So my question for you, it's less about specifically the pass offense. Are the Seahawks the best team in the NFC? NFC West or the NFC?
I don't think they're the best team in the NFC. I think you still have Philly up there. They got that pedigree. They got that resume. They have some things they got to figure out, too. I think the Rams are probably still above them until we see them play against those guys. But I think after that, they are in the mix for sure. I think they've proven it so far up to this point that defensively they could be one of the best defenses in the game. Offensively, their pass game is so efficient, one of the best, if not the most efficient pass game in football. And the run game is doing just enough to keep people honest. So, now I look at Philly and I look at the Rams, and thankfully we get to see the Rams in a couple of weeks. Still got to go through the Arizona Cardinals, but they are trending, and everyone else is starting to kind of recognize it. That's why I said on Sunday that was going to be a signature game. Mm-hmm. That was going to be the game that was the only game being played on television. The nation is watching, no matter who you're playing. Even if it is a beat-up Commanders team, if you go out there and you just stomp them like you did, people are going to pay attention, and it's the way you did it. It's the first drive coming out, 12 plays, 90 yards, scoring a touchdown. It's the explosive plays to JSN. Hello, world. This is JSN, the best receiver in the game right now. It's getting your tight ends involved. Hey, we got 2 rookies over here that are scoring too. You got Arroyo who scored. You have Horton who scored. And then defensively, welcome back, Spoon. He's causing chaos. Nicky Mawari is in there as well. So, no, this is Sunday was big because people got to see the potential of this team. Yes, it was against the Commanders. And, now it's about keeping things rolling. You make a great addition in Shaheed. I'm excited to talk about him later. And, they're getting some love.
Why aren't the Seahawks better than the Rams? And look, I'll say this. If they're not better than the Rams, then they're second to the Rams because the Rams are also excellent. Matthew Stafford is leading the league in touchdowns with 21. But Eric Edholm of NFL Network, number 1 and number 2 spots in his power rankings has the Seahawks and Rams. Seahawks, not number 2. They're number 1.
Yeah, power rankings are funny. It's not – I don't think they're saying they're the best in the team. They're saying they have the best week. Because you look at – I think that the Chiefs are above the Colts in some power rankings. You look at the Colts season, right? They're 7-2. Have a better record than the Chiefs. But it's a reaction to the weekend and what you saw to that weekend. So, no, I can see them being number 1 through 3 because they beat down the Commanders 38-14 and did it in an efficient way. I think that was key. So, I'll take number 1, but I still think
okay, what's keeping you from believing then? Just genuinely. Let's have a debate
I believe
here.
they're a very good football team. I need to see them beat the Rams.
Okay.
You got to beat the Rams. You got one of the best teams in your division right now. Like, you've taken down teams that you're supposed to beat, and you did it in an impressive fashion. And they're a playoff team for sure. But I want to see you beat a big boy, and you haven't done that yet.
Why is the onus on the Rams, on the Seahawks? The Rams haven't beaten the Seahawks. They haven't faced each other. They won't until November 16th.
The Rams have done it. The Rams have a Super Bowl. The Rams have Matthew Stafford. The Rams have Sean McVay. The Rams have Devontae Adams. The Rams have one of the best defensive lines.
No doubt.
The Rams went to the playoffs last year. Hawks didn't go to the playoffs last year.
Yep.
The Rams have done it. So I want to see the Rams will now enter the realm of those teams that get the benefit of the doubt because they've shown for 5-6 years they are contenders.
Uh-huh.
The Seahawks are like, yeah, they're contenders, but they're still on the up and up. They haven't won enough for me to say they are the best team in the conference. Top 3, I'll give them that. Yeah, but best in the conference, no. I want to see them beat the Rams.
I think I might, my gut actually believes in what you're saying, but just for the purposes of debate, because there's one to be had. Seahawks defensive line's better than the Rams. they're getting more pressures. Now, the Rams have two players who individually have more pressures than any Seahawks player, but the Seahawks are top 5 in total pressure percentage, sacks, doing it while blitzing less often than the Rams do. Their front 4 right now is better than the Rams. The Seahawks don't have as many passing yards as the Rams per game. The Rams only have 3 more passing yards per game. 3, single digit, more passing yards per game than Seattle. And Seattle actually passes the ball fewer than all but 2 teams. So per pass play, the Seahawks are more explosive than the Rams. Neither team is running the ball. I know that the Rams just put up, I think, 170 plus against the New Orleans Saints. The Rams' run game is pretty much where the Seahawks are. They might try to run the ball, but they're not doing so especially effectively. They're basically carbon copies of each other in terms of their strengths and weaknesses offensively.
Well, the Rams have just as many sacks as the Seahawks.
Darnold's been sacked less than Stafford.
The Rams have 11 less pressures than the Seahawks. The Rams blitz 3% more than the Seahawks. On paper, they're an evenly matched team. But here's the thing with numbers, man. Like you can look at numbers, and there's always going to be an argument if you put numbers into the situation, right? Numbers don't account for Matthew Stafford's 1,000 years in this league. It doesn't account for Sean McVay being in so many battles and influences NFL and showing that he can be clutch. It doesn't account for Devontae Adams' year 9-10 still being probably the best red zone threat in the game. Like there are humans that play the game that in situations those stats ain't gonna mean nothing. 3rd and 3. Can you get it done with all this pressure going on? So that's just what I'm waiting to see. I'm waiting to see the humans square up and get after each other because there's emotions, there's momentum, there's ups and downs, there are mistakes that are made. On paper, there's definitely an argument, and I don't knock anyone who says the Seahawks are the best team in the NFC. There's an argument for it, for sure. And I would applaud them, and I say I respectfully disagree with you. I think there are a couple teams I got to go through, but I ain't mad at you for thinking that.
Yeah. I don't know, man. Normally I'm pretty, not negative, but I don't know, like having been a reporter, you just are used to being a little more critical and negative, I guess, like to picking apart, because you're used to looking for questions naturally, and you're used to trying to figure out, well, would they win or not? So you're trying to look, it's just the natural way to look at things, right? So I'm shocked that I'm finding myself making more and more cases for the Seahawks to be number 1 because it's not how I entered the season. Not only is it not how I entered the season, I thought that they should be a playoff team. That should be their bar. I did not think that they'd be arguably the best passing offense in football, or certainly one of the best passing offenses in football. Oh, and by the way, they just added one of the fastest ball carriers in football.
Awesome.
And if you want to point to the Rams, General you, and say, oh, the Rams have better talent. Well, the Rams have exactly the same thing Seattle does, which is that after their top guy, there's not much of anything. Puka Nacua was 711 yards. Devontae Adams was 491. No one else has over 200. Same thing in Seattle. Jackson Smith and Jigba blowing everyone else out of the water, league-wide, but also certainly on Seattle. But okay, they just added to that group now. I don't know, man. I think they're better than LA right now, and I can't believe I'm saying it because it's not how I entered the season. But per play, this is a better passing offense.
Here's the great thing about this. They get to prove it.
Yeah.
That's what I'm saying. And it's almost like when I'm looking at my son, he's growing, he's developing, and I'm watching him grow, and I see it. I'm like, man, this kid is getting really good. He's getting really good. All right, in a week, you're playing against the number 1 team in the nation. Can you take your game to that number 1 team in the nation? I think you can. But now you got to prove it to yourself that you can do it. There's a mental thing that goes on there. That's why I love this argument, because we can talk about DVOA, we can talk about red zone, third downs, and all that good stuff. The great thing about this, they get to square up in 2 weeks. So I'm excited for that, man. It's like there's stepping stones, right? Power rankings, like what are power rankings? People sitting around and saying, hey, man, you see that game against the Commanders? You know what? These guys were 9th in my power ranking. They're going up to 1. Cool, respect. And you can't ignore what these guys did to the Commanders. But when it's talk about being the best, you got to beat the best. I think they have the talent to beat the Rams. I really think they do. But you have to be good on that day. So that's what I'm looking forward to. I give them top 3 team in the NFC. If they beat the Rams, I'll move them up to 2. Depending on what Philly looks like, maybe 1.
I think that there are areas where you can look and see, oh, wow, Sam's actually better than he was in 2024. That didn't feel like something that a national audience had left open as a possibility this year. Where have you seen him grow most?
He's incredibly efficient, and he's doing what needs to be done, but then just with that extra bit of flair and that physical talent that you often see. I thought that first touchdown pass, it's great that Torrey Horton got it and he got a lot of the attention. I thought that was an unbelievable play by Sam Darnold because he was under pressure, he's on the move, he was off balance, he's kind of leaning back a little bit, and then just delivered that pass with perfect velocity on the money for Torrey Horton. Very accurate throw into tight coverage. It was not a wide open Torrey Horton. It wasn't like the second touchdown to Horton. This was a pass that had to be delivered. And most quarterbacks who get into that sort of funny body shape and maybe leaning back a little bit, there's all sorts of opportunities for that to be an inaccurate pass and or just not get the velocity required to complete it. It really shows just how good he is. And you can see that 3rd overall pick, physical talent, and that's always been there. But now he's using that along with that composure and that efficiency to become a really dominant player. And I can't remember a first half from a quarterback since Tom Brady was doing that sort of thing when they had that record-setting season. It was really enjoyable to watch. It speaks to the fact that the Seahawks are probably now shaping into a team that can be taken very seriously in the NFC. You have to have a quarterback who can play like he's playing, and they've got it.
Speaking of shaping into one of the better teams in the NFC, they are tied for the best record. Philly, Tampa Bay, Seattle, the Rams, all at 6-2. San Francisco at 6-3. Of that group, is Seattle just as much a favorite as any to be in the NFC Championship or in a Super Bowl? Is there still something separating some other teams from Seattle? What do you see?
Every single week, I've kind of thought there is probably a team or two that are ahead of Seattle in the NFC. And I'm increasingly wondering if that is the case, actually, because Seattle, you could make an argument that they should be 8-0. That they should have beaten the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. That was a really bad, uncharacteristic defensive performance from the Seahawks in that game. They should have won that game. They were leading by a touchdown late in the fourth quarter. They should have finished things off. And against the Niners, it's a great play from Nick Bosa at the end. I thought it was a weird play call, game plan from the Seahawks the whole week in week 1, the whole game in week 1. So really, those 2 games could easily have been wins at home. And then they're 8-0. And you look at some of these other teams, like I probably would have assumed that I think the Packers are maybe ahead of the Seahawks. And then they go and lose at home to the Panthers, who were, I think, 13.5 point underdogs in that game. You look at the Lions, like I would have imagined that there was no chance the Vikings are going to go and beat the Lions. I thought it was going to be a closer game than maybe the odds were suggesting. I think they were 8.5 point favorites. I thought it had been closer than that. But they beat them. And the Seahawks have not lost to teams that they shouldn't be losing to. They've lost to the 49ers and they've lost to the Buccaneers. And they could have easily have won both games. So I'm starting to think that there's no reason to rank anybody ahead of the Seahawks in the NFC.
I'm loving the take, Rob, and I know that listeners absolutely will. Okay, I was pulling up. I apologize for looking at my phone. I wanted to pull up this tweet from Greg Olsen. Did you see it? I'm assuming.
Yes.
Made the rounds. Okay, so for anyone who did not see it, Greg Olsen said on Sunday night, can we all agree on one thing? Seattle is not a good rushing team. They are a heavy personnel passing team. If defenses are striving to stop the run, they are mistaken. It went viral in the Seahawks community because I think a lot of people thought that Greg was taking a shot. And while count me among the people who sometimes wonders, like, does Greg Olsen not like the Seahawks? He also wasn't fundamentally wrong. I mean, it was a really interesting point by a former player, someone who knows football, by a current analyst. What did you make, A, of Greg's critique, and B, overall, what do you see, Rob, when it comes to the Seahawks run game and how they try to incorporate it or maybe fail to in the offense?
It's a tweet you have to read twice to sort of really, I think, grasp the point that he's making. And I think he clarified that it wasn't a dig or anything, that it wasn't a criticism. But it is something you kind of have to read through a couple of times. And what he's saying makes perfect sense. You know, they're not running the ball particularly well, but they are facing more stat boxes than any other team in the NFL, or at least they were going into that weekend. And I think his argument is there's no real reason to do that because they're just kind of making it that the Seahawks are capitalizing on that in their passing game. Now, the one thing they're not doing is capitalizing on the running game in those situations. We've seen the running game has not been very good. Greg Olsen is absolutely correct when he asserts that. The Seahawks, I believe, are amongst the worst teams rushing against the stat box. So there's definitely work to be done there if they're going to face those situations. But I just love the fact that everything he says is correct, and it's a sign that the Seahawks are probably putting teams in a bind. Like, teams are now going to have to look at this and go, well, do we do things differently? Are we going to sort of put more players in coverage? Are we going to get out of base defense to play the Seahawks offense? And is that therefore going to open up the opportunities that maybe the Seahawks have been waiting for to run the ball a lot better and show what they did in that Kansas City preseason game? Because if teams are then going to do that, this might it might unlock the running game. And then if that happens in a contest, what happens after that? Does everybody go back to stacking the box all the time against the Seahawks and we just see the inevitable 130 yards of Jackson Smith and Jigba and Sam Darnold looking great again? So now teams are going into their game planning week to week. I always felt like in the LOB era, it was the hardest thing for teams to work out how they were going to handle the scrambling ability and the arm of Russell Wilson combined with the physicality of Marshawn Lynch. Like, you kind of have to pick your poison on how you're going to deal with that. And maybe that's what teams are now going to be faced with, a similar dilemma with different personnel. Are they going to continue to stack the box against the Seahawks and accept that Darnold and Jackson Smith and Jigba in this passing game are going to be what they are and they've got to try and find other ways to beat the Seahawks? Or are they going to adjust? And is that going to open up the running game? And that could actually be the thing that takes the offense to the next level. Because I don't think Darnold and Jackson Smith and Jigba, I don't think there's going to be a way for teams to stop them. I think there is an inevitability about the passing game at the minute, which I think even if you do a bit of coverage, the Seahawks will have probably answers to those moves as well.
You've mostly answered my next question, but I just want to harp on it a little bit more. I was going to ask, okay, well, how might other defenses adjust? We spoke with ESPN's Benjamin Solak, who mentioned the same stat you did. He said Sam Darnold is facing more stack boxes than any quarterback, and so obviously it's opening up the pass game. That is like one small aspect of what you've seen from Seattle's pass game, but it's not the only thing. JSN has been amazing. Sam Darnold's been amazing. There's been an improvement in pass pro. All of that is true. But Ben said eventually defenses will adjust and they'll try to force Seattle to run. So you think, like, if you're Clint Kubiak, if you're Mike McDonald, you're like, great, fantastic, let's see what we got here. Do you think that's something we will see here in the next couple weeks against Seattle? And what does passing that test look like?
I would imagine it's almost certain we're going to see that.
Yeah.
If Sam Darnold is having a 17 out of 17 completions, 4 touchdown half, Jackson Smith and Jigba is leading the NFL in receiving yards, and he's the only player over 900 yards. He's on pace to set the record for yardage in a season. Then I think it's certain that there will be teams thinking we've got to do something different here. I can't wait. And if I was the Seahawks, I'd be saying, bring it on. I want to see how they deal with this, because I can't guarantee that it's going to work for the Seahawks. But I think, and I accept it's preseason. You know, that Kansas City game, when they ran the ball the way that they did, was so exciting to think that, well, there might be a bit of this. And we've not seen any of it. And I have to believe that the stat boxes are playing a part in that. And if teams are going to take attention away from that line of scrimmage, if they're going to get out of base on Seattle, I think we're going to see Ken Walker and Zach Charbonnet and these offensive linemen. It's just going to open things up, and we're going to view this offense very, very differently. And they may well have a 150, 200-yard rushing performance. And then and I want to see that more than anything, because then for the rest of the season, including in the postseason, teams are going to have to pick what they're going to do. And if they know that you can beat them in two different ways, it's going to make it so much harder. So I say, I encourage it. I want the Arizona Cardinals this weekend to do exactly that, to get out of base and let the Seahawks show the league that if you give them the opportunity to, they will dominate in the running game.
Between you and I, think of a checklist right now for the Seattle Seahawks. I'm going to task you with coming up with 2 more things that you want to see them check off. If I were to come up with a checklist for this team, number 1 was going to be like statement win. Put yourself out there in a public conversation. Create a ton of buzz. For me, selfishly, I wanted to see this team do that, and they did. So that's check 1. 2 more things, Rob, if you were to choose, where you were like, my confidence is through the roof if I see them check off these 2 things. What would those be?
1, beat the Rams.
Of course.
2, beat the 49ers.
Done.
I think you're right. I think a statement win in prime time. I think running the ball, particularly well over a bit more consistent period. But it is also it is going to LA and winning that game. And it is, I'm trying to think who's coming up. It probably is the Niners and the Rams that you're going to be looking to now, is like they're the toughest games you've got left on your schedule. I'd look if they were playing a Bills on the road or something like that, it'd be like, go and win that game. Go toe to toe with a team that people fully expect to be there at the end, a Chiefs, a Bills, somebody like that, and go and beat them. And because we don't have the option or the opportunity to play those teams, I think it's going to the Rams and showing we can win, not against the backups like last year. It's like going in there, NFC West contest, go and win that. If you have to beat the Niners to go and win the NFC West on the final weekend of the season, you go and do it. That's what I'm looking for now. That loss to the Niners is going to stick with you. In Parks, I traveled 5,000 miles to go and watch it. I want to see some different results in the NFC West. So go and win out the rest of these games in what looks like the best division in football. And then I think you can go into the postseason thinking, we can have a little bit of a flex here. We are one of the teams to beat in the playoffs.
What was your just overall? The trade deadline has come and gone. Seahawks make a move for a wide receiver in Rashid Shaheed. They send a 4th and a 5th round pick next year in exchange for him. What do you think of that move?
Oh, I like it. I mean, Rashid, he can flat out run, dude. That dude is. That dude's greased lightning on the outside. So I think it's always one of those things that anytime you can get a guy that's a threat, lift the top of coverage threat, what it does to open up all your underneath stuff, just that weapon that it gives you. Plus, Bobo has the injury. Obviously, Cooper Kupp has a hamstring, although I did not know Cooper Kupp ran fast enough to pull a hamstring. So that I did not know that. So that's good to know. He's faster than I thought. So I love Cooper. But he is an Eastern Washington guy. So I got to give him a little grief. Although Weber State, Rashid Shaheed is a Weber State guy. So you guys are populating the Big Sky. The Big Sky is represented well there in Seattle. So good for you guys.
That's why we have him on. He knows. Yeah. He knows the Big Sky.
Yeah,
Idaho
exactly.
Part of that, apparently, right?
Indeed.
Yeah.
Like you didn't know. Good one, Bob.
Hey, what about just around the league? What was your reaction of some of the trade deadline trades? And then also, I want a 2-part question. Do you remember anything? I was part of the trade deadline. I got traded to the 49ers my rookie year, yeah. And then I failed the physical, came back to Seattle. But you ever remember any players like that really came in and helped your team?
That must have been awkward, Dave. Like when you fail a visit, you come back and they're like, "Oh, we thought we got rid of you. But this guy again?"
Yeah,
man, he's like a fungus. We can't get rid of the guy. No, I don't know that I was ever a part. Obviously, it's more prevalent now than it was in our time, Dave. It didn't happen very often. So I can't think of anybody during my career that either got traded to us or we traded away. So no, but it's crazy to watch it go down now. To watch the Jets unload for draft picks they're going to screw up anyway. The Jets, we're going to get rid of all this salary that we gave on the only 2 guys we've ever drafted that are worth, a squirt of urine, but we're going to get rid of them to get a bunch more draft picks that we're going to screw up. I don't understand the Jets. But thank goodness. Hey, if it wasn't for the Jets screwing up Sam Darnold, you guys wouldn't be watching a potential MVP type of candidate the way that guy has played. So good for you guys.
Yeah. Do you think there are players coming out in the draft going, well, I know there are actually, but how about when you were coming out in the draft? Were there teams you looked at and going, don't let that team take me? I don't want to be a part of that organization.
Bob, I was a 10th rounder out of the University of Idaho. No, I was anywhere would have been great with me. But now you look at it and, if you're a free agent, there's certain teams you don't want to sign with. And if you're a draft pick and you get picked by the Jets, you act excited, you go, oh yeah, and you're at that, especially if you're at wherever the draft is being held, and you clap and you put on your Jets hat, and then you do that, thing with it, and inside internally you're going, you got to be kidding me. Like, you just got to be kidding me.
Yeah,
What
I mean,
a
do you think
disaster.
You think Garrett Wilson and Breece Hall were going, well, how come he didn't move us? We would like to be somewhere
Oh,
else.
yeah, of course. They were like probably ringing up the Jets brass. Who's their GM? Like, hey, dude, hello. I'm good to go. I'm good to go. Yeah, so I am sure that that's the case in New York. I mean, it just is sad. I thought about this. I went there and called the game. Dave, and Dave, you could picture this, right? I go there, call a game. So I'm at the practice on Friday. And pre-practice for me, like I always was a stickler about working my takeoffs, right? And having the perfect footwork on whatever, like 19 handoff, 18 handoff, and taking pass sets and get myself ready for practice and just being a stickler for perfect practice. And I walk out there and the Jets offensive line are running pat and go, running 40-yard bombs.
Hmm.
And I thought to myself, one, what a worthless thing to do to warm up at practice. And two, if anybody would have ever asked me to do that before practice, I get that you're supposed to have fun or whatever. I've been like, pound sand. I am not. If I have to run 40 yards, somebody scored. Like either them or us. Like, why in the world would I waste my time running pat and go? Like, it's the dumbest thing. And and you guys aren't any good. Like, how does that equate to you having success when you can't come off the ball and have stellar footwork? And I just like, crappy organizations are crappy for a reason because they do stupid stuff.
Yeah. No, that's interesting. I mean, offensive linemen must just be going, you got to be kidding me. I mean, that's the one time when you probably could pull a hamstring, as
Right.
far as a tackle goes. I remember when I got drafted, Green Bay on ESPN was on the clock. And the Green Bay back in those days was a place you didn't want to go, because remember they had like half their games they played in Milwaukee. And
Right.
they were trying to bring all the people back, and people weren't going to games out in Green Bay. So, but yeah, it's kind of interesting how it just seems like the Jets have pretty much always been bad. Hey, Mark, what do you? I know you haven't like entirely studied the Seahawk offensive line, and this was one of the few trade deadlines where we thought, didn't think first about the offensive line. But they're kind of struggling with the run game. But the thing is, man, they have kept Sam clean, and I don't know how much of that. I can't recall if I'm looking back how much of it is more about Sam Darnold or is it about the offensive line. But they've given up the fewest sacks in the
Right.
NFL, and this is something that's been complained about here for years. But and they haven't, like I said, they haven't quite gotten the run game down yet. But they're keeping Sam pretty clean, and I know a lot of that is him getting the ball out and moving around the pocket, but still, that number doesn't lie, and I'm just kind of trying to figure out where the offensive line is, and do they need to get that run game going for them to be a legit good offensive line?
Yeah, well, I think ultimately, David, it's really interesting. I think Clint Kubiak gets a lot of credit for how that offensive line is playing, or the limited number of sacks. One, their quick game, Sam Darnold being able to read it and just let it eat. He's been incredible getting that ball out. And then one of the big things is attempts. I want attempts, even if I don't get a great yard per carry average. I want those attempts because those attempts give me an opportunity to change up my pass sets, to be able to take the passive out of pass protection. That's always a big issue with me, is if all you do is drop back and you don't get those attempts and people don't have to actually, step up and try to stop the run. then your play action game isn't as good. Obviously, that doesn't work as well. So the attempts are important to me. Then the boot keep game, the waggle game, just the quick game, I think they do an exceptional job of that. And then I think that Sam Darnold is one of those guys that's more athletic than probably gets credit for. And I think his pocket movement skills have been very good, like being able to step up in the pocket, slide left to right, kind of roll his shoulders, avoid some contact, and still be able to find his guys. I think that's been really good. So I think it's a combination of all those things. But if you show me an offensive line that gives up a lot of sacks, I'll show you two things: a quarterback that doesn't get the ball out, and I'll show you an offensive coordinator, play caller that doesn't understand the value of the run. And so all those things are in combination. I've said this for quite some time now, a couple of years, that sacks are more of a quarterback driven statistic and a play caller statistic than they are an O-line statistic in today's game. And I believe that to be true. And I think Clint's doing a great job of being balanced, of having enough run to open up the play action so you can get outside the pocket with the boot game, the waggle game, and all that stuff, and enough of the quick game to allow his offensive line to be aggressive in pass pro. And I think that's the big difference.
Seahawks getting set to take on the Arizona Cardinals this weekend. Then they'll follow up with a big one against the Rams. And a man who knows a thing or two about that team, the LA teams in general. He knows the NFL writer for the LA Times. Sam Farmer is here with us. How are you, man?
I'm doing great, Bob. Thank you. Yeah, it's fun to be up here, fun to be back in Seattle. This is sort of where my career started, and get a little rain and the Seattle flavor. I loved it.
Yeah. When did you get in?
I got in this afternoon, around noon. And
you can take this rain with you and go back to L.A., Sam. We'd appreciate it.
Yeah. We need a little change in weather, and it's starting to turn a little bit in L.A. It's getting a little cooler at night. But I mentioned I came up for Sam Darnold and Cooper Kupp in advance of next week's game, and I mentioned to Sam Darnold that this is the same weather as this pro day in L.A., which he said he never had a rainy day, practice or otherwise, in L.A. Until that pro day. And that pro day, he did great, and Troy Aikman was there, and Troy Aikman said, I could never throw a wet ball, but Sam did, and impressed a lot of scouts.
Yeah, what do you make of him? I mean, it's really interesting because we were just talking about off the air here, talking about his playoff game against the Rams when he was with the Vikings, and there was nine sacks in that game, and he's only been sacked 9 times. They're 6-2, Sam. So, he's just it looks like an entirely different player, but just like, what were some of the things? I heard that he's the son of a plumber. Is that right? And that, he's just a very, from a blue collar family, and he's just,
very, very genuine guy.
Yeah.
Very likable. You can see how the locker room would really like him here, and the Southern California guy, and has had multiple chapters in his career. So many expectations. First of all, being quarterback at USC for so many years, with 20 years without an NFL team. USC was really the NFL team in Los Angeles, and being the quarterback. Yeah. If you look at the Carson Palmers and Matt Leinarts and Mark Sanchez and down the line of guys who were in that very high-profile position, goes to the Jets, things don't work out there, goes to Carolina, and it's just multiple chapters of this guy's career. This really feels like the first time he's got a team of his own that really believes in him, and the weight of that, I think, creeps up on him sometimes. I think as he said, you don't want to think about how many jobs hinge on your performance as a quarterback, but you kind of know in the back of your mind that a lot of people have pushed the chips to the middle of the table for you.
How surprised are you by where the Seahawks are right now? Because we talked a lot before the season about the national perspective, and the eyes from the outside were looking at this team going, it's going to be a step back year probably, and I think the Vegas number average was 7.5 wins, and he and I were going through the schedule going, I see double-digit wins in a playoff team. I don't know, barring major injury, and they're kind of on pace for that. What was your feeling going into the season versus what you're seeing now?
Well, I am surprised. I'm surprised that they've done as well as they have. But I think the Seahawks largely, and this has been forever, are ignored by the media. I mean, we see that with the University of Washington too. A lot of times, it's tucked away in the corner of the country, and people don't pay attention until they start making noise. And so I don't know if there was a huge buzz either way about the Seahawks, but people know this is a tough place to play. Super loud, so many great moments, and yet, yeah, I think at this point in the season, people would be surprised with how well they're doing.
Who do you look at in the NFC and say that's the class of the conference? They're the top dog, or is there a top dog in the NFC in your opinion?
Well, yeah, I mean, I think the Rams are really good right now. I think Tampa has looked good through injuries. I'd put the Seahawks up there as very interesting. Definitely a team to watch, like Detroit, like Philadelphia. Feels like the Rams are rolling right now with the way Stafford's playing, but they got a tough one in a couple of weeks. They got a tough one this week against the Niners, a team they really can't figure out. So they've had problems. So they've got a difficult stretch coming up, a real test. But the NFC feels like there are a lot of teams that could be contenders.